Hi, Rawheads. This is Jesse with another episode of Raw and Roasted. This is episode 4. Um, Special guest today, or I'm sorry, 5. Um, or wait, what are you referencing, Dante?
Oh, just number five.
Oh, I thought you were saying 10. I was like, wait, what? Okay, yeah. So
No, just five.
episode 5. And I have a great guest today, comedian for the last 37 years, also CEO and founder of, I believe it's called Golden Art, or
Golden
what's the name?
Artist Entertainment.
Right. I was looking a little bit into it prior to having you on, Dante. And it looks like you guys have been doing, I mean, a lot of good work with comedians over the last 20 years. I was looking into the contest that you guys just finished up, but I think you guys still have like the Zoom part still going.
No, that's over as well, man. Yeah, but yeah,
Okay.
we just finished up the 20th year of the U.S. Comedy Contest. And by the way, if it was on my bio, I don't use a last name. I just go by Dante. So we're already there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't
Uh,
even know how to say my last name. I think it's pronounced SpaghettiOs. It's a long Italian name. I have no idea. It's like
funny you
11 to 40 letters.
funny you say that. Every time I was mentioning about you being a guest, I was like, and I can't say his last name. I'm gonna butcher it every time. It's
Well, you know what's crazy? Until I started my own company, I never used a last name. I just go by Dante on stage. And ever since I put my name, like for also Facebook makes you put your last name. But now people are like bringing me up to the stage, and I'm like, no, I don't even use a last name. Like no one knows me as a last name, so that's all right.
And I saw so the winners for this year was, and I had notes written at work, but I threw out the wrong piece of paper that I was writing on. I just realized that, but it was Nancy Levins, I believe, was the
Yeah,
front.
Nancy Levine won the headliner round, and a guy named Hamza Chaudhry who won the 2 year or 3 year and under. And they're both New Yorkers. They both won here in LA. They came out to LA and performed and killed. And Nancy was like the underdog of the whole thing because there were a lot of people in it that were like hardcore LA comics, and she's
Right.
this older lady from New York, but she had a killer set that night, and there were crazy good judges like Retha Jones, who has been a comic for forever, and she won last year. She was one of the judges. Joey Medina, who's one of the Latin kings of comedy, he was one of the
Yeah.
judges. So the judges were hardcore. It's not like we had just like, it wasn't. I don't even get to vote. I didn't vote for anybody. It was just big name comedians, and then we had like the booking agent for the comedians on America's Got Talent. Nyla Durrani was there. So
Wow.
we had big people, man.
And where was it held in Los Angeles?
So we did it in Bellflower this year. We've done it at like the Ice House in the past, the Improvs, just all over LA. But this year it was at the Stand Up Comedy Club in Bellflower, which is a new comedy club, and I love it, man. That place is hot, hot,
How
and
long
it
has
was
it been open?
packed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's brand new. It's like a year old. It's great. I love
Oh
this
wow.
place.
Are they have they started to get like their own I don't know, what do you want to call it, community going around them, just like how like the Comedy Store and everything like that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's actually why I picked up going there this year because I said to some comedians, we held it at a different place last year. I don't want to say the name because it's another comedy club, and not that I had bad beef with them. It's just that they didn't. There was no good cut of the door, and that's the only place we make money because, like, the comedians, when they buy into the contest, they kind of split that money. It goes to like paying the winners each night and the winners at the finals. So it's not really my money. My money comes in at the finals when I have that final show, and I make like a split of the door, and I had a
Right.
good split with this club. And then last year I thought I had a good split, but by the time I got my money, they gave me like $75 for like a bunch of shows. I was like, no, 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 I'll never be back. You can't
Oh
you
my
can't fool me
God.
twice. Seventy
So
five dollars. I spent more that night on food.
I've heard that continuously, or well, consistently, in the comedy world, is that you got to be wary of certain clubs and stuff like that, and you really gotta pay attention to the back end of things, because a lot of the times, like, because one of the biggest like eye openers was when Joe Rogan moved his to Texas and opened up the mothership, and him explaining how pretty much everything goes to the comics and nothing goes. They basically just break even just to keep it afloat and stuff like that. And that's how comedy clubs should be. It's to promote the up and coming comedians and maneuver their path easier, and also find the community and the people that are gonna follow them consistently.
Yeah, people
And
act like, these comedy clubs are so poor, that's why they can't pay comedians more. And it's like every single one of them is a millionaire. Every one
right,
of them is a millionaire. And they weren't before they opened up these clubs. Mitzi Shorrock didn't have millions before she opened up the Comedy Store, but
no,
she sure had millions when she left. And it's like, you
yeah,
can't blame them. I just hate when people cry poor. That's all that's the only complaint I ever have is if you're going to pay low, don't cry poor. Oh, I can't. I can't. Because like the Comedy Store and all these clubs in LA, especially, they don't pay. I mean, they do, but it's really low money. You can make pretty good money if you're in the main room of the Comedy Store because there's a split. But if you're
right,
just in the original room or something, it's much less money. Like people assume you're getting like $200 a night if you're Bobby Lee, and I don't know what they're paying right now, but it's usually $25 or something.
right. Especially if you're not a regular, and if you're a non-regular like door person and stuff like that, who has to work their time to get their time.
Right, and you get
Um,
zero. Yeah.
right, yeah, most of the
You're
time,
called, I used
and
to be one of those before because I was a doorman at the Comedy Store, and you're called a non-paid regular, and then
yep.
eventually you move up to paid regular.
So, what years were you at the Comedy Store?
So I guess I'm still a regular there, but as a doorman, I started actually. So I started stand up when I was like 15, and do you know who Faison Love is? He played Big Worm
Absolutely.
in Friday, and so he and I went to high school and junior high and stuff. And he's always looked like he was 50. He was always like 300 and something pounds. So I show up to the Comedy Store one night, and he's the doorman, and I'm 15, and I know he was only like 2 years older. So he's like 16, 17. And I was like, don't you have to be 21 to get in? He's like, shut up. He's like, I look old enough. You don't. I'm going to tell him
Don't blow
that
my
you're like
cover.
19, right? So that you only have to run in. And so the way it works is if you're not of age, you're legally allowed to perform, but you're not allowed to stay in the club. So you have to run in, do your show, and then run out. So for 2 years, I had
Uh,
to do that. But basically, from the time I was 15, 16, like 17, I became a doorman in La Jolla until I really turned 21. And then I moved to LA, became a doorman there. And then she opened up this new club in Westwood called the Comedy Store also,
right.
and made me the manager there. Um, and I was the manager there for like a year and a half. And then I still stayed on as a doorman till about 95, 96. So I was a doorman at the Comedy Store for about 8 years.
Oh wow. And then so because I was looking through your IMDb, which is, I mean, there's a lot to go on and stuff like that. But there's a couple of things I want to touch on. One was you were the season 5 of NBC's Last Comic Standing winner, correct?
I did not win. No, no,
Oh,
no.
okay.
Sadly, that's all right. I actually did really well on the show. I kept winning the audience vote because they had this thing. It was called the Capital One Audience, Award or whatever, where I would win a chunk of money and then be able to move on to the next round. Whoever won it by the audience vote, and it was always me. And so the comics kind of caught on to that, and then back then they could vote me off. It wasn't just the judges, and so they were like, "We got to get rid of this fool
Oh
because he's
wow.
winning everything." So yeah, that's what happened. But no big deal.
Jeez. So
That was a
tell me.
great year, though, man. It was like so originally when the show started, they were finding amateurs, even though there were a lot of professionals, like Ralphie May was on and stuff in the original days.
Right.
But my season, it was all killers. It was like Doug Benson was on there, Lavelle Crawford was on there, John Reap, Amy Schumer,
Amy Schumer.
also,
Wow.
yeah, 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 everybody, Deborah DiGiovanni. It was crazy. It was
And did they like call you up, or like how did you get into the season 5 of that? Like how did that come to fruition?
So, all right. So for years, I tried like waiting in line. Right, you go wait in
Right.
line at the Improv here in LA, and I would get in there and I would start doing a bit, and then like 20, 30 seconds into the 2 minutes they give you, they'd be like, "Thank you so much, no thanks, bye." Right. And a friend of mine had just won season 3. His name's Alonzo Bowden. I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah.
But anyway, I said to Alonzo, this was before I knew he was actually going to be a judge on my season, and probably before he knew he was going to be a judge. I said to him, I was like, man, what is the secret to getting on this show? And he goes, I'll tell you the secret. He goes, every headliner goes in there with their best 2-minute bit. The long bit about going to, Japan or blah, blah, blah. Or I have a bit called The Wizard of Oz that takes like a minute and a half. But just setting it up and telling you the 5 different impressions I'm going to do takes up 30 seconds. And he was
Right.
right. I would get to, all right, and I'm about to start. And they'd be like, okay, thank you so much. He goes, here's the trick. He goes, it's television, bro. They want sound bites. He goes, they want you, they tell you you have 2 minutes. He goes, they're going to give you 30 seconds. Put 7 jokes in 30 seconds, say them as fast and funny as you can, and be done with it. He goes, if you have that Japan bit that you think is so great, figure out the 2 best jokes, put those in that 30 seconds. Find the next best bit you have, put those 2 jokes in that 30 seconds. And he was right. And then you don't even blow through the material because they're only on TV going to show you tell like one of them. And
Right.
so you keep all that material that didn't show up on the show to use later.
Well, and that's nice too because speaking of writing, like what's your writing process like for comedy and such, especially going into that show and everything like that.
So that, man, I actually got together with a bunch of comics and said, hey, I'm on the show. Can you guys help me rewrite some of my material? Let's come up with new stuff. Let's try to write jokes about the host, maybe some jokes about who the people are that are judging. And so we sat around for like weeks and weeks and just compiled stuff for me to take on the show. But my actual writing style is more of like, if it's funny to me, if I say something like on this show, you and I say something funny, it's going to go in my act. Um, and I might change it. Instead of saying I was on a podcast, I might be like, hey, I was talking to my best friend the other day and he said blah, 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 and boom. Um, I am not good about sitting down at a computer or with a piece of paper and writing jokes unless it's for you or for someone else. Like I used to be a writer for Joan Rivers on a TV show called Fashion Police, and we had to write 200 jokes a week for this TV show. They would
Wow.
give you 10 photos of celebrities every week, and we had to write 20 jokes for each of them. Plus, we had to write all these other things.
And they
Um,
only used like a fraction of them, right?
Only 45 jokes were used by Joan Rivers every week, and she had 9 of us writing for her. So imagine how many hundreds of
Wow.
jokes were thrown out. Hundreds.
Right. A lot, and it could have been good material too. It just might not have been in the right audience or right
And I
eyes.
still have most of that material still on my phone because I was like, hey, someday I might be writing for some other show where they need a
Right.
Kim Kardashian joke or, and now I've
Right.
got a million of them. They don't fit my act, but they really are good TV jokes, like they should all be in
Right.
sitcoms or something.
Right. And earlier you mentioned Bobby Lee. Now I saw that you directed and wrote Bro What Happened. Now when did that come out?
I think 2014 or 15. Basically, that movie, I don't even know if you can find it anymore. I was paid as a writer, director, and actor. I didn't own the movie.
Okay.
But yeah, I kind of had like a little breakup with Bobby Lee over it. Like I had known him since he was a kid also. And we were friends for a long time. He also started down in La Jolla where the Second Comedy Store is. And what happened was, I guess we were supposed to have Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong was supposed to be in the movie, right?
Okay.
And he bailed on us the night before. And the producer said to me, Dante, you know a million famous comics, call people up. So one of my first calls was Bobby Lee, and he said, how much? And I said, I don't know, man. Talk to the producers. So the producers called me back. Hey, we worked out a deal with Bobby. He's going to be on set. We
Okay.
had a great time. We did. He was very great in the movie, blah, blah, blah. Cut to right before the movie comes out, there's a poster released, and Bobby's on the poster. And he goes,
Right.
why am I on the poster, bro? I only filmed one day. And I said, but you're in a million scenes in that one day. Like, if you watch the movie, people are going to think you were there the entire time we filmed.
Right.
Um, and he goes, well, I didn't know I was going to be on the poster. I'm like, actually, I remember you saying, bye, Dante, I have to go because I have to go down the hill, which is true. Every actor had to go down the hill when they were done filming to go take publicity pictures for the poster.
Okay.
And he goes, I didn't think I'd make it to the poster, blah, blah, blah. I said, man, this isn't me. He goes, well, you got to get me off. I don't want to be on the poster. I was like, it's not my movie. All I did was make a phone call one night and say, we need an actor, and I'm turning you over to the producers. And if you want to do it, do it. If you don't, don't. But yeah, it's so funny, man. Like someone called me up like last year and he's like, yeah, Bobby was talking about this on his podcast that he got mad at you on this.
Dude, I was actually just about to say that. I was like, this is actually like ringing a bell for me now because I was like, I do recall, I think Bobby mentioning a Dante and saying something along the lines of this. Um, Granted, he didn't explain it the best way. But it seems like it was just like a misunderstanding. I mean, Bobby. I mean, I don't know Bobby personally, but based off
Bobby
of
gets upset very quickly
that's what I was gonna say.
and
I
holds a
assume that he gets
grudge
very upset easily, and then he'll hold on to it for a long time.
for a very
Um,
long time. Yes.
and it's it's not good
And you
for
know
his
what's
health.
crazy? We really were good friends. Like I remember when he was poor, they had these cigarettes. Camel cigarettes would have these little things on the back, and you got like a dollar thing on the back of these cigarettes. It's like a coupon, right? And if you
Okay.
save up thousands of them, you can get yourself an ashtray or a hat or some dumb thing through Camel cigarettes, right? And I
Okay.
remember he was always smoking them, and I was collecting those. And I was like, "Hey, Bobby, I will give you, I think, a quarter for every single one you save." He's like, "Thanks, bro. That'll really, help." And he like ended up selling me tons, right, for years and years. And then he got famous, and he didn't need the money or whatever. But when we were on Bro, What Happened? He said to me, "Dante, do you know you saved my life?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Man, there was one time I wanted to kill myself, and you talked me off the ledge." I was like, "I don't even remember this." He's like, "No, Dante, man, I think of you all the time that you saved my life." So he even said this on film because it was in between takes, but we didn't stop rolling, right? And
Right.
then so when I saw the behind the scenes, I was like, "Man, that's crazy that he said this." And then in like days later, I'm no longer his friend because he was on the poster. Like none of it made sense.
And and honestly, I mean, being on the poster, I mean, in my eyes, doesn't seem like that big of a deal. I mean,
And it's a
it's more.
funny movie.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
like it's
it's
like Superbad meets The Hangover. Jamie Kennedy stars in it. A whole bunch of people.
I did see Jamie Kennedy. I am probably gonna watch it later. I watched the trailer because I hadn't heard of it before because I mean it didn't get I don't think there was like much advertising or anything or
Yeah, what
publicity done
happened
with
to
it.
the movie was the producers, I don't know what happened, to be honest, but I think they either fought with each other or they somehow screwed up and didn't pay someone right, but they had to pull the movie and they've never put it back up. So something screwy happened. It was out for like years and you could rent it, you could find it on Amazon. So now you have to torrent it or whatever it is now
Right.
and just steal it, man. Or I even have a copy I want to put up on the internet because why not?
I mean, yeah. I mean, especially if it just helps everybody that's in there, especially that's still in the business. I mean, it's just again free publicity on something that you did, which was a fun little project where you
Right.
were basically just partying or pretending to party, and just chilling at a house party. And by the way, so you wrote the story, correct?
So the story's written by this guy named Joe Benkus, I think, and that also could be part of the problem. Maybe they didn't pay this guy. So what happened
Okay.
was the original story that I got this script that was like not very long, and it was almost ununderstandable because it's a lot of flashbacks. And I was like, "Oh God, I can't even read this." So I asked the producer, I'm like, "I don't get it." He kind of explained to me. He goes, "Look, man, the guy didn't flush the script out very well, but basically what we want is a movie where the two leads wake up and bad things have happened to them at this party." And one of the guy's girlfriends is showing up the next day, and he woke up in bed with a woman, and he's supposed to be a virgin. His girlfriend's a virgin. They're about to get married, and he wants to find out if he slept with her before, So they have to figure out what happened the night before. So the whole movie is they, call Bobby Lee. "Hey, man, you were at the party. What happened?" Now Bobby retells his version of it. Then this other dude, wakes up still at the party, and he's like, "Hey, guys, what's up?" No, bro, what happened last night? So he tells his version of what happened. And it's like five retellings that are none of them are correct. And then finally, the girl who wakes up in bed with him comes in and tells the real story, and it solves the mystery. But it's a really, really fun, funny movie, man. Like to watch the movie over and over in retellings, it never gets boring because no one's story is even close to each other's.
Right. I mean, and that's usually how it goes at house parties, especially after that. I mean, especially New Year's time. New Year's, I mean, pretty much everybody's memory is wiped and then refreshed the next day. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, but I
Cool
also
shirt, by the
had.
way.
Oh, thank you. I don't even know where the hell I got it, to be honest. I I think my wife got it for me. My wife dress. I mean, are you married?
To a
So yeah,
comedian.
my wife dresses me basically. So if I don't look good, I'm not going out of the house. And if I try to, she's Latin, so she's got that throwing arm, and she can aim very well.
So it hit you with
Especially,
a shoe, huh?
oh yeah, from very far away, she can just pinpoint that shit. I don't know how, but she's incredible at it. Um,
You
and
have a kid too, don't you?
I have two. I have a son who's going to be turning 5 in 2 weeks, or I mean, no, yeah, 5 in 2 weeks. And then my daughter is going to be turning 7 in December.
You know how I know? I was watching your podcast and I saw on the door behind you, you used to have a drawing of like a tree or something.
Yep, it's this one right here. Yeah, I had to take it down because my wife didn't like the placement. So I put it upside here. But yeah, my kids made this for me this previous Father's Day.
It's great.
And and it's yeah, I mean what's the greatest part of it is that I'm their stepdad, so I'm not blood related, but they don't see me anything other than just dad, which is
Of
really nice.
course. I get it. That's great, man. That means you're a good dad to them.
Okay, that's not gonna stay anymore.
Now you've ruined it, Dante. I've ruined everything.
um I so on my notes I'm trying to remember because I'm so mad that I took them off, or that I threw it away. But I did see, so for the comedy US contest that you do every year, it was the 20th anniversary of it this year. When do you guys usually like begin taking entries and start promoting that stuff every year?
Okay, so it takes place usually from October through February. So what will happen is we'll usually start doing like one or two shows in LA every month to get the preliminary rounds. You know what I mean? Like this guy,
Right.
whoever comes in first in October or whatever on October 3rd, let's say the person in first, they automatically go to the finals. The person in second moves on to the semifinals. Then at the next show in October, same thing. So by the time we get through October, November, December, and January, now we've got about 10 people in each category, that have moved on. And then we'll do the semifinals, and then like two more people move to the finals, and then we do it. So people come from all over the country, all over the world. Um, yeah, it's pretty crazy, man. Our first year we started it was the year my daughter was born. Um, and I did it because I was trying to stay in town more. I started teaching stand up. I started running a room at a bowling alley. And then I started this contest. And the very first year, the winner was Anthony Jeselnik. He was our first winner of the contest. But we've had some really good people win it and really good people not win it. Like Whitney Cummings was in it for a couple years. She never won it, but she was great. She always like came in second or something.
That is actually very surprising because I mean Whitney Cummings is huge right now,
Yeah, she's
across the
huge,
board.
man. Chris D'Elia was in it a couple times. He never won. But Tony Baker, he won it. Sam Comro won it from America's Got Talent.
Oh,
I
nice.
mean, just tons and tons of people. What's his name? Jerry Garcia won it. Sally Mullins, really good people, just killers.
And so when the well, let me talk about this. So like for the winner of the 3 and under this year, so what does it look like after? So what does it look like after they win? Like I did like
Okay,
because
so they win a prize, like either a trophy, or this year I did mugs because people don't really love trophies anymore. They used to be bigger, but I was like, man, I love my mugs that people have given me that like were from like comedy festivals or things like that because you always will have them. You'll always keep them out, and guests will always be like, oh, what's this? You know what I mean? So this year we
right.
gave out mugs. Obviously, they won money. But then they also, so since I own this company, Golden Artists Entertainment, we are a production company. a booking company and a management company. So not only do we book comedians on the road, but I also manage actors. And so each one of them who wins, they get a 1 year contract with our company. And some of them are like, well, I don't act. I just want the booking contract for a year.
Right.
So I'll give them like, the booking contract. And then others, like this year, both of them wanted to be managed. So I manage both of them. And so I send them out for auditions and things every day.
That's awesome. And actually, I was going to ask you about that if you guys only took comedians or if you guys did acting and other avenues as well. So
Yeah, so the comedians, we just do bookings for comedians. And I always tell comedians this: our bookings is non exclusive. If you can go get 20 booking agents, go do it. Because what if you're with me and I only get you 1 gig a year? That's not enough to
right,
live off of. And you'll be upset with me going, but you're my booking agent. I should be one of 20, really, because this way, as a comic, I'm telling you, no matter what, even when I was on Last Comic Standing, 80% of the gigs I get myself. The other 20% are through agents or through friends. Even,
right.
like other comedians probably get me as much work as my agents combined.
Well, I mean that I well, it's gotten more present nowadays with the camaraderie amongst comedians now, where because I mean you can tell me if I'm wrong, but back in the day it was more like it's me or nothing. Like it's not you're not worrying about everybody else or trying to boost everybody others morale or their business or their fan level, but you're just trying to boost your own. Where now it's gotten to the point where pretty much the whole community of comics have gotten together we're gotten more into a family situation where now we're sending things back and forth to each other a
I
little
would
more.
say I would say it's more 75% of what you're saying now. We all know the 25% that are like the weirdos that aren't into helping each other out and doing that stuff, or they're the haters that are always,
Right,
putting down other comics or whatever. But yeah, I'd say 75%. And you're right. Like when I started, it was every man for themselves. Plus there also wasn't social media. So it's not like you
that's
could
huge.
help promote someone else. How could you? What are you going to do? Just go tell the next person?
Right,
Like comics today don't realize how hard it was when we started. Like, so I started back when Joe Rogan started and Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle. And, like when I was a doorman at the Comedy Store, I think it was me and Eddie Griffin and Carlos Mencia. And, like we were all the doormen at the same time. And Pauly Shore was our age or, a couple years older. And it's like, um, and everyone was still alive, like the greats, like Richard Pryor and Robin Williams, and they were all there every night, and Jim Carrey, and on and on. And but there was no social media. There was no way of telling people to come see you except for on the stage. You get up on the stage and be like, "Hey, and I'll be at the blah 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 next Tuesday," which you
right.
couldn't say if you were in a comedy club because they didn't want you to promote the next comedy club. So what we had to do, and this is why I get mad at lazy comedians who are like, I don't promote, man. I didn't promote anything. I'm sorry. Here's why I get mad. In the old days, I had to put a card on every table that said, join my fan club, and I will send you a letter. And I'm not talking about an email. I mean, I would have to handwrite out a letter
Handwritten.
saying, I am performing at the Comedy Store next Tuesday. I hope you get this in time and that you can make it to the 8 o'clock show. And then take it to the mailbox and send it out. And I'd have to put 20 of those in the mail every week.
Wow. I mean, and that's true hustling back in the day. Like things have gotten so much easier for my generation coming up just with social media, like you're saying, because not only being able to self promote yourself, but also to put your own material out on like YouTube and other things now where comics are now doing that more present because the deals that are coming up with Netflix, Hulu, whatever it might be, are just not what they're wanting to do, or they have some takes on what things they shouldn't say or whatever it might be, and they're just not okay with it.
Well,
One
I'm
being
glad you brought up that you can put stuff on YouTube because that is the second thing I was going to say is that it's so much easier and cheaper these days to send a packet to me as a booker or to that comedy club. You could sit there in a day and for free, whatever your Wi-Fi costs, send out your headshots, your bio, your resume, your video, all these things in a quick email to somebody. In the old days, do you know that we had to mail everything? We actually had to go buy videotapes and go to some place that would make them for you, where it was like $5 a videotape. You're like, oh, thank God it's only 5. That other place wants 10 per tape. And they would mass produce these like videotapes and send them to you in a box. And you would open up the box, and then you would go, okay, now I have to go get a folder. And on the folder, you would get some like picture of yourself and glue it to the front. And then you'd put all your stuff inside the folder, and you'd put that and the videotape in an envelope, and you'd spend another $3.50 to mail that off and hope it got to the club owner, who would eventually put that in his thing, if at all. He might have had too many people, because when you would show up to a comedy club, you would see comedians' tapes scratched over, and it would say like Home Alone 2. Like they had just stuck it in there and recorded a movie off of our videotape. But so every time I wanted to send to a comedy club, it was about $10 out of my pocket. And that's 90s
Jesus.
$10.
Yeah, I was gonna
That's
say.
$20 now.
I the, and how long did you do that?
Up until, I would say, 15 years ago. Up until 15 years ago is about when they stopped asking for physical tapes. Because even with social media, a lot of these guys didn't even have emails. They didn't have any way of checking your stuff out. So even when like MySpace started and all these other things, people would still be like, no, we only take tapes. Send me a tape. And then eventually it went to DVDs, which were slightly cheaper, slightly. You know, you could at
Right.
least make those cheaper at home. And I guess you could make the other ones at home, but you had to buy 2 VCRs. You had to know what you were doing. They never
Yeah,
looked
as a
as
whole
good as when the
setup.
guy did it at the store.
Hmm.
Plus, they would put a nice label on it and all this other stuff for the $5. But yeah, man, it's like now, that's why I always say comics are so lazy. You can promote to all those people on social media just by putting up a picture and a flyer that goes out to your 15,000 people that already know you. Plus, you know, if you put that on all the different Facebook groups, on Craigslist, on this, on that, now it's out there to tons and tons of people. And comics say, yeah, I don't promote. What? What are you talking about?
That, and when like comedians start to get traction and stuff like that, and then they start saying no to certain opportunities and stuff like that, when just any opportunity, will help, move you forward. Because I mean, shout out to Bert Kreischer, because he's one of the like few people that literally says yes to anything. He's just like, he doesn't even have to hear the details. He's like, yep, just put me on it, because he just wants to be out there. He wants to be doing comedy and stuff like that. And if that's not your attitude towards comedy, then you might be in the wrong field, to be honest.
Right, man. When comics are like, "Yeah, I had to play at this blah 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 place the other night," I was like, "Good for you that you got to play there." I promise
Right,
you, there's comics that would give their left nut to play at the place you're complaining about.
right. I mean, I, probably kill somebody, but you know. Um. Anyway, speaking a little bit more about your just experience throughout the years, I did read on Facebook, and I don't know if this is true, something about you fighting Muhammad Ali. Is that
Yeah, man.
okay?
Um,
Tell me a little bit
so
about that.
so I used to be a boxer. I don't know if you can see, but my nose is super crooked from it. It goes this way. But
Okay.
yeah, I used to be a boxer when I was a kid, and I actually met him when I was about 16 years old. A friend of mine, her dad owned a grocery store, something up the hill, like a Rite Aid or whatever, like a pharmacy.
Right.
And she calls me up and she goes, Dante, my dad just invited Muhammad Ali to our store to sign some autographs to get people to come into the store. You should come meet him. And I was boxing at the time. Like I was like in the middle of training with my trainer. And he goes, go. You got to go meet the champ. And so I'm in my boxing gear. I run up there. I grab a couple more of my like shirts and things because I'm thinking he'll sign whatever I bring. Um,
Right.
and so I go up there, and sure enough, he starts just signing stuff. And he goes, "Wait a minute, you're a boxer?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to box the greatest?" I was like, "I do. I do want to box the greatest."
Well,
And
yeah.
he
I mean,
goes,
if you
"Okay,
got the chance, why not?
yeah." He goes, "All right, let's all go outside." So he says to this big crowd, "We're all going outside to the parking lot." He goes, "Everybody form a circle." So everybody forms a circle. He goes, "Get your stuff on. Let's go." So I put on my gloves. He puts on his gloves, and he goes, "All right, let's go." So I'm nervous. I'm like, I hope he doesn't actually hit me. I'm still a kid. You know what I mean?
Right,
And
right. Don't kill
and
me yet.
even though I'm a kid, I am a boxer, and I know I was a pretty good boxer because so I had this big trainer who would hold my bag. It was this big heavy bag, right? And my
Yeah.
trainer goes, man, out of every boxer I've ever had, no one has ever lifted me off the ground when they hit this bag. He goes, every time you punch with your right arm, I fly backwards with this thing. And he was about 300 pounds, this guy, right? So not only was
Yeah.
I moving the bag, I'm moving him. So Muhammad Ali says to me, "Let's fight." So I'm just throwing some jabs. He's like hitting me in the face, just playing around, right? He goes, "You really want to hit me or not?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, let's do this." And he goes, "All right, I'm gonna stand still, and I'm gonna let you hit me as hard as you can." And I was like, "Okay." So I hit him, not as hard as I could. I didn't. I thought, he's to me, I thought he's an old man now because he had retired 5 years early. He was probably still only like 38 or something. You know what I mean? Like a young
Right.
man. But I thought he was like an old man. So I hit him kind of hard, but not hard enough. And he looks at me and goes, "I'll tell you what, that wasn't as hard as you can hit, is it?" And I said, "No, it's not, sir." He goes, "You're going to hit me as hard as you can, or I'm going to hit you as hard as I can." And I was like, "Oh,
Okay. Yep.
all
There it
right, that
goes.
makes things different." So I gave him the Angelo punch, man. I hit him as hard as I could. He didn't he didn't move. I don't even know if his skin wrinkled from my punch. It was like hitting a steel wall. I hit him as hard as I could, and here's how hard I hit him. I've never seen this on television. I've never seen it in real life again. My glove exploded on his body. Like I hit him, and my glove just cotton flew out of my glove. That's how hard I hit him, and the man didn't move. Now he's laughing. He goes, "Oh man, your glove exploded. That's crazy." So he's like, he started signing everything I had. He signed my shirt. He signed my shorts. He signed the bad glove. He signed the good glove. Everybody was laughing and taking pictures. It was crazy, man.
Oh my God. Do you still have that glove?
Yes, I do. And you know what's crazy is later in life, his daughter May May was a Comedy Store regular, and so Mohammed would come into the Comedy Store with her all the time, and he remembered me from me retelling the story to him the first time. That every time she came, he and I would hang out the whole time she was on stage and doing stuff. So I ended up becoming friends with Muhammad Ali later in life. But
So so
I
how
was
is
thinking
he
about him today because I have a shirt that says Muhammad Ali across the front. It's even the same color as this one, but you can't read it anymore. And I was like, man, that's faded. And then I went, oh my God, that's how fleeting fame is. When I was a child, and even up to, I'd say 20 years ago, the most famous man in the entire planet was Muhammad Ali. You could go
right?
to the furthest reach of Asia, Africa, the Americas, the South America, everywhere. And everyone knew Muhammad Ali. And what's crazy is when I wear that shirt today that says Muhammad Ali, people are like, "Oh, who's that?" Or I've had people like Arabic people walk up and be like, "Oh, do you know someone named Muhammad Ali? Because that's my name." Even my daughter, my 21-year-old daughter, still calls me like when she's on a date. She's like, "Dad, who was that one boxer you fought?" My own daughter doesn't even know who Muhammad Ali
Oh
is. But
my
that's how
God.
fleeting fame is and time. And I get it because, like, I remember my parents always going, when we go watch a movie, "Hey, that's so and so. He was in the blah, blah, blah." I'm like, I don't know any of that. I don't know what you're talking about. You know, Bob Johnson. He was in the something show on the. I was like, that was in the 50s. I don't know anything about that. And they would always get so angry. But now I get it. Once you get past 30 years old and people that are younger than you don't know anyone from like 10 years before, you're like, oh my God, what are you talking about?
I have that issue with my wife is notorious for not being able to remember names and faces. So anytime I mention anybody famous or anything like that, I have to like name multiple movies and stuff like that. I'm like, they were in this, and this. And she's like, I still don't know. Just show me a picture. I'm like, okay. Um, but yeah, but her, so when it comes to entertainment and stuff like that, she's full into the what do you want to call it? The mainstream K-pop, Korean drama stuff that's going on nowadays. That pretty much Netflix is universally only that now. It seems like every Netflix original. It's another Korean drama of some sorts, and and I always ask her like what's this one about? What's this one about? And they're all the fucking same, just
I
different
know.
people in it, and I don't get it. It's the
That's
same
how
thing with
Chinese karate movies used to be. It was always about someone killed his uncle and now he's got to avenge his uncle. But it was always about the uncle.
right, right,
Yeah.
and like I'm not gonna knock the Korean film industry because there's plenty of shows that I love from there and stuff like that, but these fruity tooty K dramas they need to stop. They're throwing them out like candy nowadays, and it's just it. I'm and I well I is this ringing? Sorry about that. In net or yeah in Netflix with the shows and how they do their seasons now, because apparently after the third season they end up having to pay their actors and their production company and everyone more money and stuff like that, and that's why a lot of these Netflix shows are 3 seasons and stuff like that, and that's why they're going more towards these live shows with comedians and stuff like that, which I'm liking because it gives comedians another avenue to go across. Plus it doing these live things, even though they're not necessarily live. I mean, they're pretty much close to live as one can be. I mean, I think they have like a production team of like 20 people that
Didn't they
edit
just
it
do
real
one about
quickly.
Joe Rogan last night?
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet. But
It's
I
controversial today. It's everywhere.
really.
Yeah, because he was saying stuff about, like he's famous for all of his. I guess there's one clip that's floating around where he's like, I lost all these people during COVID. I mean, they're still alive, but I lost them. He's like, I used to believe in vaccines. I don't believe in vaccines. I don't think we've been to the moon. I'm pretty sure that Michelle Obama was born with a penis. Like all these things that you're like, come on, Joe. You used to be like one of the smartest guys on the stage, and now you sound crazy, man.
I mean, that'll happen when you speak to Terrence Lawrence.
Yes. Terrence Howard?
Or Terrence Howard. Yeah,
Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, because I don't know if you saw when he brought him on again and had like an actual expert talk to him,
I saw. And that expert
but
was like, man, no, stop.
you could feel it through the audio. This man was like, I don't know how to tell you this, but everything you're saying is wrong. And I'm just
Right,
gonna try and tell you the most polite way possible
right. He's
that
like, when
you
you
are
say it, it
insane.
sounds childlike. Yeah.
Right. Especially when he would he'd have Lauren, he'd be like, all right, Terrence Howard, explain to me what you're actually trying to say. And so he'll go on this long tangent, and then at the end of it gotta go, all right, now see, this is what's wrong with that, and then just go into
And
everything
what's
about, and
so
it's
great
just
about that is Terrence is using words and things that none of us understand unless you're into, molecular biology or whatever he happens to be talking about. So it was nice to have someone who could actually call him out on the bullshit.
and I think that's one of the reasons why he's gotten so much um like pull in like the science not industry but science realm, and because they think that because he's saying all these big words that he knows what he's talking, it's more of like he read and learned the dictionary and now he's just implanting words like ad libs or like a Mad Lib book, and he's like, this makes sense with these words together.
Well, he
And
also sounds like an idiot when he's like, I don't understand how one times one is still one. Like, you just don't understand how things work, man. He's like, it should be two. No, it shouldn't. That's a plus,
an
not a
action
time.
plus an action must have a reaction. No, that's not. Yeah, and I knew what the guy was meeting. He goes, what you're doing is I think I figured out the problem here, Terrence. It's that you keep putting two things that have nothing to do with each other, and then you're trying to make them similar, and they have no similarities. There's no metaphorical way of putting them together. It's just you're I to me, to be
It's
honest,
really
I mean,
fun. Isn't it fun to watch people call out other people on bullshit? You know what I mean? Like
well,
like that's what
yeah.
Joe Rogan used to be good at. Joe Rogan calling out Carlos Mencia on Carlos's bullshit was great. And it's like I used to love watching when Joe Rogan would hit the stage at the Comedy Store, I would sit down. Most comics, I walk out. But Joe, I'd be like, man, he's such a good wordsmith. He's so smart about things. And now it's like when I watch him, I'm like, man, I wish old Joe was back. You know?
So yeah, and funny you say that. Like his older material, I mean, not when he first started. When he first started, it was very
Yeah, it was
cringy.
cheesy. It was cheesy on television.
Yeah, and and once he got off of like television and stuff like that and started going full stand up, his material got a lot better. And some of his like early stuff, especially um I want to say like 10 or 15 years ago, his one where he was talking about the big giant teddy bear THC gummy or whatever, and talking about how like I can't believe they sell those to people. Like you're only supposed to eat an arm and a leg, and they give you the whole damn thing. Like that type of stuff was funny. And then he, because he was more of Joey, he was more along the lines of Joey Diaz, and Joey Diaz is one of my favorite comedians on the planet. And
Great. Both of them
actually,
are, man. I just think that Joe just got weird. But yes, I love both of them. They're both hilarious.
have you ever crossed paths with Joey Diaz
I
at
know
all?
all of these guys personally. As a matter of fact, if you ever go to the Comedy Store and you see Joey Diaz's name, look right above it. Our names are next to each other on the Comedy Store wall. But
Oh
yeah,
wow.
Joey Diaz and I, we used to go on the road together. We happened to do a couple of shows in, I think it was Tucson, Arizona. This dude ran, it must have been like a drug run or something, because we would get paid a lot of money. We'd stay in these presidential suites, and they would book me, Joey Diaz, and then some other third big comedian. And they would take us to a strip club all day and be paying the girls like $100 to go give us another lap dance. Here's another 100. And then they would pay us a lot of money. And we would only do, I don't know, half hour each, right? He does a half hour, I do a half hour, the other guy does a half hour. And there was like 40 people in the crowd that had paid $5 to get in. I was like, man, this is a front for something else. They are
And
selling cocaine
was
or
this
something
multiple
out of here.
nights or just the
What's
one
that?
night? Was it
One
multiple
show,
nights?
one night, 40 people in the crowd at $5 each, and we were being paid out of our noses, man. It was insane.
It seems a little fishy. Seems a little fishy.
It was fishy, man. It was
Um,
fishy. But I've been on those fishy runs before where it's a drug run, man. I used to be very famous on BET, and I did this one BET tour through like Iowa and all these places, and there were 10 cars taking three comedians. I was like, why are there 10 cars? And the guys that were with us, where it'd be like 16 of us, they would all disappear during the shows, and the shows were never packed. Like they forgot to promote the shows. There'd be like 15 people at the shows, and at the end, they paid us 5 grand each in fives and ones. I was like, oh, we were on a drug run this whole time. They went from town to town using us as an
oh,
excuse in case the police pulled us over to say, no, we're going to this place to go, do a comedy show. When in reality, they were taking crack to Waterloo, Iowa, and selling it during our show, and then coming back, and then we'd move on to the next town. They go sell crack somewhere else. It was
oh my
insane.
god. And just to touch a little bit back on Joey Diaz, because I know most people that have done comedy shows and stuff like that have plenty of stories or plenty of crazy things around him. Do you have anything crazy that happened with you guys?
The only thing that I thought was crazy is this was before weed was legal. I had one of the craziest jobs of all time, and it's almost gone away because of technology. But for years, anytime a movie had over 100 extras, so they would usually pay about 100 extras if they could on a big movie like Spider-Man, one of the Batmans, any Adam Sandler, like in what's it called, Moneyball, how it was a baseball movie and they had to have the baseball stands filled. Well,
Right.
in the old days, they would only pay about 100 extras, and all the rest were told, come here, we're gonna you get to see Brad Pitt, you get to see this actor, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Dante the comedian will be there entertaining you guys all week. And so they would fly me in, and I would have this god mic where I could talk to the whole stadium, and I would tell jokes, and I would give out a free car, or I'd give out DVDs. Hey guys, I'll be up to your section when this section's filming next, and I'm gonna ask you guys trivia, and I'll give away, some autographs from this guy or that guy. And so I did this on over 100 movies, right? One of the
Okay.
movies I did was called The Longest Yard. It was an Adam Sandler movie that we filmed at a football stadium, and Joey
Right.
Diaz was in the movie.
Right.
And what's crazy is he goes, Dante, come to my trailer after the shoot. I want to talk to you about something. I go, hey, where's Joey's trailer afterwards? I'm looking around and they point. I shit you not. It looked like he set his kitchen on fire because there is just weed smoke pouring out of the windows like in a movie, like a Cheech and Chong movie. There's just weed, and you can smell it as you're walking up. And again, this is like 20 years ago when it was highly illegal. And there's cops on every movie set. They hire cops to take care of Brad Pitt and everyone else, and they know where I'm going. But because it's Hollywood, they just let it pass, man. But Joey opens up the door. You don't even see him at first. A cloud comes out, and then you start to see, hey, Dante, come on, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, man, that's my funny story about him is I could not believe how much weed smoke he had in that trailer. He must have spent his entire paycheck on weed and just went in there and was like, Paul.
I'd assume so, just based off of everything that I've seen with Joey Diaz. I mean, I assume he is exactly who he is on camera, behind the camera. There's no off switch.
150%. I saw him one day driving by. This was about the same time because we live. I don't know where he lives now, but he used to live by me in Hollywood. And I saw him out in the street, and I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" He's like, "Hey, hold on, Dante, I'm buying drugs." He says it this loud. And he like goes into some guy's car, and he's like, he just comes out with all these drugs, and then just goes, "All right, take care, Dante."
Oh my god. Jesus. Um so to continue, so with you just got back from Palm Springs. I was looking into a little bit that if you want to talk a little bit about what you were doing up there.
It was just a there's a on the TV show Drag Race, they have this thing called the Snatch Game. The Snatch Game is a takeoff of something I just did called the Mismatch Game, which is actually a takeoff of an old TV show from the 80s and 70s called The Match Game. And on the Match Game, how this would work is they would have like 6 celebrities on a panel, and those celebrities were asked a question, and then the contestant was also asked a question. And if any of the panelists got the same answer as the contestant got a point. So what happened was at the Gay and Lesbian Center near my house, they ask celebrities to come in and play bigger celebrities. So they'll take a B celebrity like myself and say, "Hey, will you be Robert De Niro?" All right, I'd play Robert De Niro. I'll be like, last night I was Christopher Lloyd. He plays Doc in all the Back to the Future movies. So the
Right.
whole night I had on a white wig, and I was like, "We've got to get back to the future," stuff like that, right? And so it's me and a bunch of people on this panel, and they do a contest and they raise money for the Gay and Lesbian Center. And then so last night we just all went out to Palm Springs because there was this club that wanted to bring the game show to their club. So it was me and a bunch of people playing celebrities, and it was really fun. It was a good time, man. I enjoy it.
And are you do you do these like raising money and fundraiser things quite often?
All the time, and especially as a comic, man. I've done them my whole life, and sometimes you get paid for them, but most of the time you don't. I don't get paid to do the things at the Gay and Lesbian Center. Every once in a while, if you do a charity, like I'll host for a charity for like 8 hours on certain nights where they have like this big silent auction, and then dinner, and then another auction, and then a live auction, and then they want me to entertain something
Right.
like that because it's taking up my whole day. They will just offer you like, "Hey, we'll give you $1,000 to do it," because they know bringing me in, I'm going to make that $1,000 like that, because like they're giving like a golf cart. We're all right. It's a live auction for this golf cart, and like the highest bid's $5,000, and then I will be like, you look like you got tons of money. You play golf. Give me 10 grand. All of a sudden, something they would have made 5 grand off of, they just got 10 grand because I kept pushing it. You know what I mean? So when you have
Right.
a good, what do they call me? What are those guys that talk real funny at a rodeo where they talk like this, and an auctioneer?
Yeah,
Auctioneer.
auctioneer.
Yeah, so they call me an auctioneer, and I'm really good at it, man. Because I guess because I'm a comic, I make it funny. I embarrass people a little to where they're like, "All right, I'll buy it for my wife." Blah blah blah.
Right. And so with in our house, so my comedy is your type of comedy is all majority of communist type comedy. My wife think majority of like things that like in comedy and stuff like that, like a lot of jokes that I make at home, she'll immediately call me racist, or she'll say you're a colonizer, or or you're being genderistic, whatever it might be, that she goes on it. And granted, I mean, and I can't say anything because one, she's black. Two, she's Latina. Three, she's an immigrant. So she is a very angry person and can be very dangerous at any time. So I gotta be very careful with my wordings around her. And so that's why I wanted to start stand up comedy because, well, actually, a year ago, I was on a business trip in Nashville, Tennessee, and I went to Zany's and I went to go see some of the comics there because I had never been to like a true comedy well, other than Funny Bones here, but I don't consider Funny Bones that like I don't consider them that big into the comedy field. Like they have good people here and there and stuff like that, but
Sure.
they're
The
more
way you can describe it is there's A list, B list, C list. It might be like a B or C list instead of like an improv or Zanies or something.
right. And it just blew me away and stuff. And then the next day, we did this. So basically, every day we'd go into this big giant room where basically everyone from the company was there, and they did like little skits and stuff like that, pull people up and had people volunteer for prizes and stuff. And one of the games that they had was they wanted you to create a slideshow presentation using a slideshow presentation that they created with random pictures that they found on the internet. And I had seen like a few years ago, Vanity did something with the Workaholics guys where they just did like a presentation of something that they had no clue about. And so I was like, well, that's something I can do. So I raised my hand and I went up there and I absolutely killed. I ended up winning amongst the five people or whatever, and they were just all clapping and cheering. And then a weird thing happened after that for the next like day and a half until we left. People kept coming up to me in the hotel and stuff like that, stopping me, taking pictures with me. People that I didn't know their names and stuff like
Cool.
that. And it was very, very weird. And then people kept also coming up to me and asking like if I had done stand up or if I had done that type of stuff before. And I was like, no. And they're like, well, you should. So after that, I started writing when I got back from Nashville, and I've been writing ever since. But with living in Syracuse, New York, there's not really a comedy store, improv store, anything along the lines of that around here. So what I've been trying to do is find open mics here and there and stuff like that, and just do whatever I can until eventually I can get, or well, eventually me and my family want to move out of New York, and I want to go somewhere where comedy's more eccentric, and also the food's better, and just the agriculture's better, everything's better. Um,
100%. And those are all good reasons.
Right, and I don't know if you've ever been to Syracuse, but Syracuse is just a dump of a dump, and
I
they,
I've been there. I'm not going to say that, but yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it gets pretty cold there too.
yeah, that, and it seems like over the years they've kind of lost interest on maintaining the city in a sense. It's just there's so many abandoned buildings with just broken shit everywhere and stuff like that,
Time to get out.
and exactly. And especially with inflation and everything and the taxes here, it's getting too much.
It's
So
not worth it.
no, not by any means. And but yeah, so that's really why I wanted to get into comedy and stuff like that, which was awesome. Why I when I saw the post and everything about you, I was like, he's perfect and stuff like that. And also, I wanted to because I saw that you do like tips on your Facebook from time to time for comedy and stuff like that. And I've been looking at your tips and everything, which a lot of it is good stuff. And I so regarding so because my whole thing with comedy is that I still am not understanding the structure of or how to construct a bit to its completion in a sense. Like that's something that I'm learning along the way. Like
Can I
how
tell
do we,
you? Can I tell you?
yeah.
You want to know?
Yes, I do.
All right. So I can break this down, and hopefully your listeners will understand this. I'll try to say it in the simplest terms without using too many comedian words. So, okay, everyone has the same problem as you when they start out. They either can't figure out how to write a bit, or they think that they're so smart that they can write a bit and it's not funny. It's a long story, but it's not funny. So here's what usually ends up happening. Usually, what happens is a comic writes a bunch of jokes when they first start out. They don't have anything to do with each other, so they have to use a lot of segues. Segues are, in case people are listening and don't know, it's what gets you from here to here. If you're talking about your mom's food, and then in the next sentence you're talking about your wife, you have one of these segues, which is speaking of women in my life, my wife, blah blah blah. Right. So now there's
Right.
a transition. Instead of being like, my mom's food is blah blah blah. My wife said this. It's a flow. But what will eventually happen, how you end up with a bit, is this. So I had this bit about flying on an airplane, right? That was one of my bits. Then I also had this whole bit about being in Japan. I had a separate bit that was about staying in a hotel. And then one day I went, why is this not one long trip? Why am I saying I was in New York in this hotel? Why am I saying I was flying to Detroit on this? And why, you know what I mean? How about
Right.
I flew to Japan? Now I tell the story on the airplane as flying to Japan. Now I land in Japan and I tell this bit. And then I end up, and then I get back to my hotel in Japan. It's actually three separate stories that are now a long bit. That's how bits actually come about. You don't plan them, you eventually just go, holy shit, this all ties together.
Ah, okay.
And how most jokes work, in case you don't know, it's setup, punchline, tag, or act out. So setup, in case this is just for the people who are learning comedy or listening.
Yeah,
Setup is
absolutely.
anything that you say that gets you to the punchline. Then there's the punchline, and then a tag is a mini punchline that you say right after the punchline while the laughter is coming down to get the laughter to go back up. You can have a bunch of these, or you can even add an act out where you say something and then you act it out and they laugh at you acting it out. You know, like if you have a JD Vance joke about humping the couch, next thing you know, you're humping the stool after you tell the joke and they're
Right.
still laughing. And the act out becomes the joke. So let me give you an example of a joke with a setup, a punchline, and a tag. Okay.
Okay.
Um, Here's one of my wife's jokes. My wife is a comedian, by the way. Her name is Rebecca Cochin. She's very funny. She actually hosted the AVN Awards. I don't know if you know what those are, but those are the adult video awards. Like
I do, and
it's
that's
always like some
awesome.
giant comedian hosting those, and she did it, man. But all right. So here's the joke. She goes, my brother got a BB gun for Christmas recently. I've never shot a gun in my life. He was like, no, you got to go shoot something with the gun. And I was like, okay. So I see a bird and I aim and I fired, bang. And the bird fell right down to the bottom of its cage. Boy, was my mom pissed when she got home. Okay. The setup is all about the gun, right? And then I see the bird and I fire, bang. That's the end of the setup. The punchline is it fell right down, and we all think you're going to say into the backyard, off of the telephone wire. The joke is it fell to the bottom of its cage, which means it was in someone's house. Okay. The tag is it wasn't even her bird. The tag is, boy, was my mom pissed when she got home. So that's the tag. Setup, punchline, tag. And
I've
then that, by the way, real quick, that's called dribbling. In like in basketball, you can't like when people say, "Oh, I have long stories. I don't have setup, punchline, tag." I'm like, then you aren't playing basketball, man. You are just, you're taking shots from half court, but that's not the game of basketball. Basketball
right.
starts with dribbling, which is setup, punchline, tag.
Right. And I mean, that's actually that information is actually going to help a lot with my writing, actually, because my brain's already starting to work some things together. That actually helps a lot.
Right. She could even
And
act out the beep beep ooh, and that's
And for my listeners out there, take note of these, especially if you're looking for to go into stand up comedy. I mean, you're learning from one of the legends here, Dante, firsthand, who's been in the industry for 37 years. I mean, I think he knows what he's talking about when he comes to this stuff. So, and speaking of, because you mentioned the BET, I did see that you won 3 BET awards. What were they for?
I think I actually hold the record for winning the most BET comedy awards. And for the white listeners, that is not a betting network. It is
Yeah, yeah,
Black
exactly.
Entertainment Television. I was on a show in the '90s called it was called Comic View, and it's where a lot of people got their start. Cedric the Entertainer got his start there. D.L. Hughley, a whole bunch of people. and I was like one of the standout. Well, I was the standout. I was the white guy, and they did a BET Awards, and I ended up winning 3 of the 10 comedy awards. It was like I went up every third award. It was crazy. Richard
Wow.
Pryor was in the audience, who was a friend of mine at the time. I got to speak to
Holy
him.
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, man. Um, but yeah, my ex-wife was also black, and so I get what you were saying. And what's funny though is when I was coming up, it wasn't like there was wokeness. You know what I mean? Like you were allowed to basically say everything and the rule basically back then, and I think it still is, you can say anything you want as long as there's no true malice. You know what I mean? If you go up on stage, obviously a white guy can't say the N word, but if you say something about black people, it should be okay as long as you don't hate black people and it's not a falsehood.
And that's what I try to explain to my wife every single day. And that's what she doesn't get. I'm like, you gotta. I'm like, comedy is where the brain goes to tickle itself. Like that's where, like, it's not meant to be any serious. Anything that's coming out of comedians' mouth, it's not 100% of what they truly feel. It's just what they are saying it because they think it's so preposterous to be saying and funny that they can't even believe it's coming out of their own mouth. And that's just something she's along with, the Karens and the woke people out in the audience and stuff like that, and the hecklers that you get from time to time. They just don't get it. And actually, I wanted to ask you this before I forgot. Hecklers. So throughout the years, have you had, like, I mean, you've had hecklers, and I can imagine, but like, what was like the worst one that you can remember?
Can I be honest with you? The truth about hecklers, since you're new at this, most hecklers don't actually heckle like we see in movies. In movies, you see like someone go, "You suck, get off the stage." In my reality, it's a heckler is usually someone who thought your joke was funny and then tried to add something to it. Ah, that's all she said, but she's drunk, so from the back, all you hear is blah 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 blah, and it's like, and the crowd is like, "Oh, they're heckling," and I'm like, "No, that was funny." I'll turn to that lady and be like, "Lady, you need to buy a vowel. What did you just say?" You know what I mean?
Right.
Something like that. Because if I attack her, she doesn't want to be attacked. She didn't do anything wrong. She's actually having a good time and trying to, like, "Oh, my mom does that." Like, she's excited. So if I treat her like the "oh, you suck" guy, then I'm misreading the room. 99% of hecklers are that type of lady.
Okay.
1%, every once in a while, there's a drunk asshole that, fuck you, man, everybody, fuck this. Like, it's usually a drunk. It's usually someone who misheard a joke. Like, I'll tell a race joke, and then all of a sudden I see the person of that race walking up. I'm like, dude, I actually was saying that white people are shitty. I wasn't talking about you. You weren't listening. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you heard it wrong, bro. It's the worst ones. I guess I've had a few guns pulled on me, and or
Really.
threats of death. I'll go get the gun. It's in my glove box in my Honda CRV in the, my black. And then the, like, bouncers grab the dude. The police show up, and they're like, "What kind of car was it?" I was like, "Oh, it's the black Honda CRV." They go out to the glove box. They find the exact gun he said. Um, yeah, it's crazy,
Jeez.
man.
See,
Yes, I've
I
had
mean,
I've had gunshots go off at my shows. I've had people have heart attacks at my shows. I've had people have seizures. I've had people so drunk they just, like, fell, hit their chin, like
oh,
knocked themselves
jeez.
out, and like there's paramedics in the room while I'm telling jokes. It's crazy.
Well, no, or just you're so funny they're just falling over. That could be
Yes.
it too.
Well, that's what I always say.
Um,
I'm like, man, I hope that dude dies because that will make the news. Him just passing out does nothing for my career. But if he dies, they'll be like, man, Dante was so funny. He killed last night. He literally killed. And it's never happened. No one actually died yet at one of my shows, unfortunately.
unfortunately,
But
and
Yoshi, let's go back to being woke. So
yeah.
after COVID, my wife is, like I said, a comedian. She's 13 years younger than me, and she's very smart, and she's up to date on everything. And she's like, "You can't say certain things anymore. I know that you were on BET, and you got away with, you and the Dave Chappelle's and the Chris Rocks, all the stuff that's on their old stuff. Young people are getting mad at now, and this and that." And I was like, it actually scared me. And for the first 6 months after COVID, I thought my shows were terrible. Like I thought that I was cutting words out, I wasn't saying things. And then one day I went to Alaska and I was like, man, Alaskans are crazy. Most of them are up here because they're hiding from somebody. I'm going to say whatever I want in Alaska. And I wrote all these bits to say about wokeness, and they actually killed. And I'm pretty woke. Like I said, I'm not out there to hurt anyone. I'm not out there to
Right.
make fun of fun of you personally. If I talk about your race, I'm talking about the funny stereotypes we all have and saying, something
Right.
about it. So it's like I even wrote a joke where I said, my wife says there's words you can't say, and I go through a whole bunch of words, but I'll give you one example. She goes, yeah, she told me you can't say Oriental anymore. And at first I was like, why? That sounds fancy, man. I wish I was Oriental. That sounds like a good word. But then I got high and I realized why we can't say Oriental. It's because Asian people can't say Oriental.
That's true.
And then people laugh at it because I was just making fun of how I can't, I have to be woke. And then I'm actually saying something unwoke again.
Right. And I don't know why this just popped in my head when you were saying that, but recently, so well, I guess it's just because like woke things like of different things changing are are what they're defined as changing over time. But I recently found out what a douche actually is.
You didn't know what a douche was?
Okay.
Because
No.
they don't have them
No, I
anymore.
did not. They didn't teach that. They didn't teach us that in elementary school, so I did not know that. And because I was like, I think I just called her a douche. I was like, why are you being a douche? And she was like, no, what I need is a douche for because she was on her period at the moment, and she was like, I need that, and I was like, I don't get the joke, and she was like, a douche, and she was like, do you not want to know what a douche is? I was like, what are you talking about? And then she showed me, and it said feminine douche on the bottle, and I was like, wait. I was like, so you're telling me this entire time, throughout the years, me and my friends have been going around calling each other something that you stick in your vagina. Is that what you're telling me? She goes, yes. And I was like, Jesus Christ,
Yep.
this must be what woke feels like.
Yeah, man. There are so many things that, like, when I was growing up, that they don't have anymore. Like, my daughter wouldn't know what a douche is. She has no idea because eventually women found out it's not very good for you. Some women still use it. But, like, when
Right.
I was growing up, we knew it because it was still in our homes. Like, our moms used douche and all these things. Like, I remember you would call someone a douche by using other words because it was made out of water and vinegar, right? And so we'd be like, look at that dude, man. Water truck, vinegar truck, douche.
I mean, and that goes along with just a lot of these words nowadays. I mean, there's so many things that are coming out that have double meanings and stuff like that, and that's why in comedy you got to be sort of careful with what you say and stuff like that, because depending on your audience, you can definitely piss people off, and
You
then
don't
that
want to
can
make
be
the okay symbol anymore. When I was growing up, this is how you were like, hey, everything's good. Now, if you do this, it's a racist symbol.
really.
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I did not know that, so I
This
guess
is
I gotta
what,
stop doing
when
that.
if you ever watch like the Proud Boys or certain cops, they're always like doing this symbol to each other. And what's crazy is in sign language, it actually means asshole. When I was growing up, like everyone would be
Oh.
like, A-OK, A-OK. Because it's an O and a K. You see what I'm saying? It's okay. Um, but now it means that you're a racist. Like there's a comedian who was like a cowboy. I don't even want to say his name because whatever. But during COVID, when everyone was turning on these people and that people, and there were Trump people, he decided to be a part of that unwoke group. That he took a picture of himself in front of like a presidential podium, and he's doing this on like the cover of his all of his social media, basically saying I'm a racist. And it was like,
Mm.
man, I don't even know how people are hiring this dude if he's doing.
I in well, in the past, I mean, I want to say 3 or 4 years. I mean, there's been a ton of comedians that have been pulled under the microscope for various things and stuff like that, especially with the Me Too movement and everything like that. That was huge, which was initially after COVID, which just, I mean, COVID and then through that was just a very dark time for everybody. And I mean, I know for especially for comedians because clubs were closed and things like that. Like, what did you do to maintain like well, sanity as such, and then also like being able to still do shows and stuff?
You know what, man? I was one of those people who was like, I listen to scientists. If they tell me not to go out to clubs, I'm not going out to clubs. You know,
Right.
it's like I'm not smarter than these people. I'm going to mask up. And people are like, oh, masks don't work. I'm like, they're not a fucking cure, bro. They are a preventative measure. You think that doctors in every hospital around the world are doing it as a joke? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so what I actually ended up doing was staying home and doing those Dante's comedy tips and then making up other things to see if they would stick, like cooking shows. And I had this one thing about conspiracy theories where it was a half-hour show where I'd interview celebrities via Zoom and then talk about, like I don't know, UFOs or other, Bigfoot. And it was actually a good show. But then me and the cartoonist of the show, we got into this big whatever, and he was also the editor, so he took everything off the internet. I don't even know if you could watch it anymore, but those were great. Those were great shows. Like it was me, celebrities, and cartoons, and scientists and doctors. Like we had everybody on the show. It was great.
Was that on YouTube or was that on like a web
Yeah, it was
platform?
called Getting High with Dante and Debunking.
That's a great title.
Yeah, so
Uh,
I would just sit there and get high and talk about conspiracy theories.
so, and are you located in? Are you living in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I live right in Hollywood. Like if I walked up my street right now, in 5 minutes, I would be at the Roosevelt Hotel or the Chinese Theater. They were like right up my exact street.
So, I mean, I've been hearing a lot about like the homelessness up there, but like, is that still like pretty bad up there?
Okay, so here's the truth. If I took you outside right now on camera and I walked around my block, we would not see one homeless person. If I took you on the next block, we would not see one homeless person. Do they show up where tourists go? Sure. Is it as bad as they make it look in the media or on social media? No. I promise you, those guys found a tent where some people were living off of a street and they filmed them and then they went down 10 more blocks, filmed those guys. But when you watch the video, it just looks like everywhere in Hollywood is these homeless people. Um, the only place that I see tons of them is actually in downtown LA, and it's crazy. There's this one block. They used to all be on Skid Row. Now they've taken over this one area, and you kind of have to walk past there if you ever go to downtown to certain areas or you park near there, and it is insane how many people are in this one little area. But no, it's not like like I remember in the 90s, everything was about gangs and this and that on TV about LA. I've lived in LA my whole life. I don't know if I've ever seen a gang or a drive-by or you know what I mean? Like there's no spray paint near my house, and I live in Hollywood. It's not like I live in Beverly Hills. I live in the heart of Hollywood. Um,
Right.
it's it's nice. You want to see outside?
Yeah, actually, I do.
Why not? Let's go outside. Let me take this off. I'm gonna go show you
Because
around.
all I've got is crappy New York weather. So,
Yeah, let's go look around, man. My neighborhood's great. Plus, I turned my yards during COVID into we have a turtle rescue, and so I made everything very tropical. Like my yards look like Hawaii.
oh,
These are my
wow.
little turtles. Say hi, turtle. Yeah, man. So this is my house, and then I'm gonna show you around the neighborhood so you can see. But yeah, man, it's super nice. This is Hollywood. No homeless people. Nice cars.
Nice weather.
Right. Nice looking people. Nice,
Uh,
yeah, nice cars.
and that's another thing. That's another thing too with New York. I don't know in comparison to Los Angeles, but like people's attitude and demeanors in New York are terrible. That's another reason why I wanted to get out of here because it doesn't matter who you talk to on the street or if you talk to a random stranger. Most of the time, people are trying to steer away and not want to talk to you and stuff like that, or not want to communicate with people that they don't know and stuff like that. But if you go to any other place, like I was blown away when I went to Nashville. It made me want to move to Nashville. Honestly, like everything, like everyone there was so fucking nice, and
Right.
the food was fucking phenomenal and cheap. It
Yeah.
like I I called my wife literally right after seeing a menu, and I go, "You will not believe the fucking prices here." Okay, they got a fucking full dinner meal for $5, and this place is open till 3 a.m. I was like,
Right.
I could live here.
And dude, see, and you got to know the towns too, because it's like I would move to Nashville. I would never move to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Like Chattanooga, it's okay, but I run into too many weird like racist people and stuff there. Whereas like Nashville, I never really saw it. Tennessee, the other parts can be a bit racial, you know. Um,
Yeah,
but
with Nashville, it's because everybody. I mean, that's another one of those places where a lot of their population or a lot of their city folk are people that have migrated to that place not only for music but
right,
for
it's
fashion and
it's like
whatever.
Austin.
Right. I mean, in Nashville, you can't go a block without seeing somebody performing live music. Like it's impossible.
Right,
Which I loved that too. Just seeing all the creators all around, just showing their original songs, original pieces, throwing their little Instagram thing up there. It blew me away because you don't see that stuff here. Everybody is just 9 to 5. Like I was starting to write this bit about like how it seems like New York has fallen behind of all of the other states. Like they're last in getting everything. Like the last kid getting picked for dodgeball, and they when it comes to transportation, food, whatever it might be, we're the last to get it. Like we just got those scooters that people can just pick up and drive or whatever. We got those 2 years ago, and those have been in fruition for like 10 years.
right. We have
And
robots in LA that deliver our food.
exactly. You have robots. We have, I mean, granted, with our streets and our roads and everything else like that, that they're always working on, but yet not fixing. They, there's no way for it to be feasible for these things to come here and stuff like that. And that's another thing. And that's just the mayor. I don't know what the mayor or what the governor and
Yeah, man,
whatever
you got
they're
to get out.
doing
Get out of Syracuse because there
for
are
real.
good places. And you know, here's the key. Wherever you pick, here's what my wife said to me. She goes, "I don't mind paying more to live in LA." She's like, "I don't want to live blah blah blah. I don't want to live there." And I said, "Why?" She goes, "Cuz I don't want to live next to someone who doesn't believe in science. I don't want to have dumb arguments with dumb people over dumb shit." You know what I mean? She's like,
Right.
"We've never had to argue with anyone over science where we live."
And so, with you being in Los Angeles and Scientology being a big thing over there, so have you have you come across some of the brethren of their what their flock or whatever the hell they
Okay,
are and
so
stuff like
they
that?
own a lot of property and they put these poor young people outside trying to get you to come in. Hey, can we do a IQ test on you? It's free. And it really is like they're going to hook you up and tell you like, "Oh, you have positive ions in your system and if you sign up, blah blah blah." But it's like any religion, man. It's like, they're all screwy. This one just is more screwy because they talk about UFOs because it was a science fiction writer that they took too serious. You know what I mean? It's very culty. We all know, we've seen those documentaries where there's supposedly children that are, on the seventh floor of this building over here being held against their parents' will. How about whatever her name is? I think his name is Miscavige, the guy who owns or is the president of all of this. His wife's been missing for a decade. These people are multimillionaires. Who goes missing when you are the wife of the leader of Scientology unless the leader murdered you? I always joke with my wife that that's why they've got Tom Cruise on lockdown is because they're like, "Man, you got to kill this woman. You're killing her and we'll give you everything you want."
You want to know what? That makes a lot of sense. Because I was going to mention, Tom Cruise is one of like the very few people that stayed with it through all this time and stuff like that. And it's like honestly, like he's on their board, I think, and
I
like
think he's
he's
actually dating the guy whose wife is missing. That's my theory. And with poor John Travolta, he was born in the wrong time. Like if he were a gay actor now, no one would really care. But the fact that he was like came up in the 70s and was a sex symbol, you couldn't say he was a gay actor. So when
right.
Scientology said, "We'll protect you. This will never come out. We'll spend all the money in the world to." But I know all these people who were famous in the 70s that were like, "Man, he was the gayest guy in Hollywood." Like everyone had a gay story about John Travolta.
I mean, and then recently Bill Paxton too. All that stuff with him.
I didn't
Uh,
know
be,
that.
yeah. I think it was Bill Paxton. Let me just
The guy from
verify that.
Twister who died.
No, it's no, hang on.
I was gonna
From
say I never heard that about him.
yep, it's not Bill Paxton. I'm just thinking of that
You
because
mean
Twister just
Kevin
came out
Spacey?
recently. Yes. No,
Kevin
no,
Spacey
no. Yes, Kevin Spacey. Yep, yep, yep.
from Usual
Um,
Suspects and other movies.
and yeah, and you know, after like all the allegations and everything and stuff like that, you start hearing all this stuff, and you're like, how did like none of this get out before now? Especially there's like one story where like he like assaulted like an assistant like literally out in daylight, like in front of people, like people were watching and witnessing it and stuff like that. And
Dude, I don't know how they get away with these things. Like, as a manager, I don't put up with anything. I don't. Like, if you do
right,
something crazy in front of me, I'm going to call you out on that. I'll call the police on my own clients if I have to. You know what I mean? If I saw them
right.
do something wrong, like I had a client that got caught up in the Me Too movement and ended up going to jail. Um,
Oh wow.
you know what I said to that person when I found out? I called them up and I said, man, I hope you didn't do any of this, but if you did, I hope you rot in jail. And I never spoke to them again.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
because it's like I don't get who's covering up for bad guys because it sure isn't me. But I also got to tell you, I don't see. I've never seen anything. You know what I mean? People are always like, "Oh, Hollywood is either they're eating babies and they're all doing drugs." I know everybody. I've never seen that. Sure, people smoke pot, and I'm sure people do coke. They haven't done it with me. I did coke with people one time, no, twice in my life, and other than that, no one offers me drugs. No one, you know what I mean? It's like you just don't.
right.
So much of it is just lore, and of course, there's people out there that do these things, but it's not like they make it sound. And like people are like, oh yeah, Hollywood eats babies. What? Where are these missing babies coming from?
And these rumors and everything like that, like when I was trying, so one thing that's consistent with what my mom consistently says to me when I bring up any type of decision that like I'm thinking about doing and stuff like that, she always goes towards the negative of what she has heard or whatever might be consistent of that. Like I said the other week, I was thinking about like Arizona as a spot to move to, and she was like, well, have you looked into that about like the political like environment around there? Have you looked in about like, are they friendly with immigrants and all this stuff? And have you looked into this? And I'm like places that you think are bad are not as bad as you think. I was like, first of all, we live in Syracuse. Do you know Syracuse is literally in the top 10 of worst cities for crime in the country? So literally anywhere else is better than here. It's just a proven fact, and that's what screws up people's um view on these different places and stuff, and then causes them not to go to these places just because they hear from somebody else that all these people do this somewhere here and stuff like that. And
Sure. It's like I said, or like you said, are there tons of homeless around here? Of course we have homeless, but it's not like people make it out to be. Or like how people are like, oh, there's earthquakes. I'm not coming to California. I can't remember the last time we had an earthquake that anyone felt.
right, and that's what and that's another thing too. When I mentioned California, she was like, well, isn't California's gonna fall into the ocean? I'm like, okay, we're very very far off from that. If that's gonna we'll be fine. Okay, like
Right.
just
New
stop. And
York
then
could like New York just had a big earthquake. They've also had tornadoes. It's like,
exactly. And like if I was saying if I was going to like Kansas, I'd be like, okay, yeah, you might have a few points about going there. But I'm not going somewhere where, it's consistent bad weather, consistent danger and stuff like that. I'm picking places that have viable cities around them that will give my not only me but my family and my kids like other opportunities that we don't have here. And there's a ton of stuff everywhere else that we don't have here.
yeah, man.
um
I mean, there are good cities out there that also got taken over by New Yorkers and Californians. Like Austin used to be cheap, Vegas used to be cheap. Now people are like, "Hey, man, I pay blah 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 to live in Vegas." I'm like, "Yeah, that's not cheap, man. That's what I pay in LA. You could be living in LA for that price." And it's 120 degrees there today.
yeah, so that's one thing. I mean, unless you're have like a residency or something like that in Las Vegas, or you work in Las Vegas, I don't know how anybody else could bear living there. Because I mean, they're famous for having what's called hot days instead of snow days, where like people just don't go outside because it's too hot, or they don't go to the playground
It's too
because
hot for months in Vegas. Like I was in Palm Springs yesterday. It was 117 and it gets hotter in Vegas, and at 117 I almost passed out walking from my car to the restaurant, and I grew up in the desert. And at night when I drove
wow,
home at night, I took a picture of my odometer and stuff because the it still said 107 at 9 p.m.
wow.
At night it was pitch black and it's 107 out. Like
I
it was
mean,
unbearable.
I guess the plus on the heat in Las Vegas is that you don't need an oven or a stove to cook your food. You can just go outside and put it right on the fucking asphalt, and you'll be able to cook it.
You know what made me sad though in Palm Springs? As I walked into that restaurant, I literally thought I was going to pass out just from walking from my car to the inside. And I was shaking. Like I thought, oh my God, I got to get water in me right away. And I started drinking water and I started feeling better. And I looked outside and there was this poor, like she must have been like almost 70, this lady standing outside who was obviously homeless, who was, they had these misters, and she was standing in 117 just trying to get a little bit of mist on her so she wouldn't die. And I
Oh
thought,
my
even if I
god.
go get her a drink, 10 minutes later, she's going to be in the same situation. You know what I mean? It's not like I can get her off the streets.
And the little bit of sad truth about like people that are usually that well I wouldn't I would say like I would say a good percentage of the people that are homeless in Las Vegas weren't broke or homeless when they originally arrived in Las Vegas. It's just Las Vegas turned them that way.
Sure,
Um,
they either lost
it,
their money or did drugs or a million other things.
yeah, because I mean it's the city with no laws, according to people and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
my
Especially,
wife grew up there, and we still go visit family there. And it's like, I think they're like 50, 51st in the nation in education. And it's like, and it's because there's also Guam, there's also Puerto Rico, even though we have 50 states, right? But
yeah,
it means that they are behind either Guam or Puerto Rico. And my wife goes, you know why? They don't want you to be smart in Nevada. They don't, because they want you to grow up and be so dumb that you will go work at a casino for minimum wage and be yelled at by everyone. They're not trying to produce smart people. They want you just to go work in casinos.
wow. So they're basically a farm, just farming out idiots just to
Dude, there are
put out their own
four
will.
semi-big cities. Vegas is kind of the biggie, right? Other than
Right.
Vegas, you've got Laughlin, Tonopah, and Reno. If you drive the state of Nevada, you're going to see desert for 90% of it. And if you
Right.
go visit the other towns that are there, those other towns are, um, what are they? They're like, there would be like 12 trailers and a brothel and a post office that is also a trailer. And that's the whole town, and a gas station. And so their grocery store is the gas station. Other than that, they have to like drive into some major city once a month, buy all their groceries, and come back to their dumb town. But that's most of Nevada looks like that. It's not like the rest of the country where it's a normal state. It's a crazy looking state.
I mean in California, once you get more into the Midland, isn't there deserts there too?
Sure, like I grew up in a desert town called Ridgecrest, but it's not like what I'm describing. At least
Right.
Ridgecrest was still 14,000 people. Barstow, where people stop to buy like gas and stuff from between LA and Vegas. You think of as a small town. It's like 200,000 people. It's still bigger than most cities in other places, but it looks tiny because all you see off the highway are the gas stations. So you go, where is everyone? But if you drive a mile that way, there's an entire sprawling city. But man, it's not like Nevada. What I'm telling you about Nevada is a whole town will be 12 trailers and three businesses. Like that is most of Nevada. And I travel the country as a comedian. I've seen everywhere. I've gone to every state. That is the nuttiest looking state I've ever been to. It's insane.
So then what's the best state that you would say then?
California by far. You want to know
Okay.
why? It's so long that it stretches all the way up to, what is that, Oregon? And so we've got forests, we've got waterfalls, you've got snow all the time. You've got San Diego, which is maybe the best city I've ever been to in my life, and I've
I
traveled the
have
whole
heard
world.
that.
Yeah, man. It's like you've got beaches and mountains. You've got the finest restaurants in the world. You are where I live right now. I'm 2.5 hours from Mexico. Um, it's and it's also, look, we have, like, where I grew up in Ridgecrest. It's a shittier, poor, methy type town, but there's still normal families that live there. Like, I grew up there. I didn't do meth. You know what I mean? But
Right.
it's like a half and half, or at least a big portion to where you go, Jesus Christ. But but again, and it's not like California is all blue. People act like it's all blue. Some of the worst, you know, politicians you can think of are California politicians that come from Orange County or other places where you're like, oh, they're a Californian. Yes, they're California. Like, half of San Diego is red, half of it is blue. Um, we're a pretty fair state. It's just that even the red ones in San Diego still believe in science. They haven't gone full Alabama. You know what I mean? They might complain about wearing a mask, but they're wearing their mask.
Right. I so and speaking on the mask thing, when COVID like was first being brought up like in the U.S. news and stuff like that, I was working at Costco at the time, and so I started seeing just Asian people coming in, and they would always have masks on, and I was like, what the hell's going on? And then I started like, hearing the news about this like COVID-19, and I was like, it's just a flu, like it's just gonna be anything else. And then a few months came by, and then I got a brand new job as a car salesman. And the first day I was there, they sent everybody home, and for that break of work and everything that everyone had for that 6 month period. And so, which was actually kind of lucky for me because I was able to, throughout those 6 months, spread the learning that I was going to have to do prior to being able to sell. I was able just to get right into selling, which was nice. But seeing and not believing it first and then having it happen, it was just crazy because and I was one of those people where I was like, it's not as bad as people are saying, like when you get it, like it can't be that bad. I got it, and immediately I changed my mind. I was like, because depending on the severity of it, if you get like the worst dose of it, which me and my wife both got the worst dose at the exact same
Were
time.
you unvaccinated at the time?
So we had gotten the one vaccination. We hadn't gotten the second one yet. We had it scheduled, and so we got COVID, and then I just I felt like I aged 100 years overnight. Like I felt like my bones were gonna break, and we me and her have never felt or never like seen each other in that way before, and it was just crazy. And then after that, I was like, all right, I was wrong. Every time I called someone a pussy for this, they're not
Right.
pussy. They were strong
Dude,
for this.
everyone I know that didn't see it, here's why people are like, vaccinations don't cure anything. I'm like, no one ever said they cure anything. When you go get a flu vaccine, it's so that the flu hits you less hard, if you
Right.
even get it at all. It might stave it off, or it might give you the smaller version, but that's why you do it. And so it's like, I had all these friends that kept, and family members that were like, we're not getting vaccinated. We're not. Guess what? Not one of them is alive today. Not one. Not one of them is alive. They all died of COVID-19. I remember this one comic.
Wow.
He's the one who scared me the most. I think his name's Michael Yo. He said to me, he not me. He said on this like video, like on Instagram or whatever, he goes, "You guys, it was the worst I've ever felt, like what you were saying, except he was unvaccinated. He was like that first round of people who got it." He goes, "You want to know what the scariest part to me was?" He goes, "It was everyone screaming inside the hospital in this ward because we were all in the same
Oh
ward, and then you would hear their screams stop." And he goes, and then someone else would be screaming, and then their screams would stop. And he's like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna
God.
be next. I'm gonna be that guy who stops breathing." And it's like, people, as it was growing and growing, people were like, "This is nothing. I don't need to wear a mask." I was like, man, if you look at the numbers, and this was like even before COVID, the vaccine came out. I was like, look, everybody used to be upset about 9/11, how 5,000 or almost 5,000 Americans lost their lives. I was like,
Right.
if you look at COVID, which has only been going on for almost 9 months at the time, we've lost more people than 9/11, Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the World War One, the Vietnam, the Korean War. Every war, basically, except for I think World War II, if you added up all the numbers, we had lost as many Americans in 9 months as we did over, what, decades of wars? Decades. Afghanistan, Gulf War. You know what I mean? All those wars combined, we lost more people in 9 months, and people were still acting like it was no big deal. I was like, man, come on.
And after everybody went back to work and everything like that, it was such a weird world to live in because it felt like everybody was joining the world for the first time again. Like it was, and the whole 6 feet thing, and then I mean, I still have gas stations here that still have the glass paneling up and stuff like that. They're like, fuck it, we're gonna put it down. We're just gonna keep it up for the next pandemic or whatever. And I think that hopefully we don't have something like this ever again. But I think the whole shutting down thing was like a negative thing in the long run because not only because one thing they didn't think about is like all of the small business mom and pop shops out there and stuff like that that have been open for 20 30 years that they solely are supplied with their income based off of their one store or a couple stores or whatever, and then all of a sudden they aren't able to do that because
Of
the government
course.
literally says they're not able to.
But here's my argument to that. It's always easy to be a Monday morning quarterback after. You know what I mean? We should have, we should have. At the time, the top scientists, not just in America, throughout the entire world, said we all need to quarantine because no one knew how bad it was. We didn't have the vaccine yet. You know what I mean? Like, no one knew what to do. And it's like, if we would have kept everything open, would we have lost more people? Yes, we would have, for sure. We would have lost millions more. Um, and so it's like I'm not this guy who's like, it's always right and this is wrong. I just look at it as I have a good memory of how the shit went down, and it's like no one knew, and people kept acting like, well, it's this president, that president. Hey, let's not forget Donald Trump was president. He was against masks, and he's the one who did do all the shutdowns. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's not like it was Biden in office or Obama. It was Donald Trump. And it wasn't just America, it was every country on the planet. We all remember watching the Italians, singing to each other from their balconies because no one could see each other. It's like,
Right.
and it's like, I agree with you. And once we found out that this or that, but it was once people got vaccinated that we could see each other again because we weren't going to die if we all went to a comedy club. But we could have in the past.
Right. And during like the shutdown for like all the countries and stuff like that, I think there was one country um with who had like I forgot how they were able to do it. I think they stopped like way before other people of allowing people into their country through travel and stuff like that, and they were able to minimize it like substantially.
Of course.
Um
Of course.
and,
And guess what, though? It's like all of I just read something recently where all of the red states that were against masks and everything else, they were higher than other countries in deaths. Just as like Arizona, I remember being like third on the list of worldwide deaths throughout the world. Like number one was, let's say it's Russia. Number two is China. Number
right.
three is Arizona. Then we go to Germany, then we go to somewhere else, then we go to Alabama, and it was like, oh my god, our states are worse than entire countries.
And I mean, what I'm seeing right now is funny. So I mean, you know, North Korea might have a lot of bad rap, but they did good during COVID. It looks like
Sure.
their numbers are pretty good. That's because nobody can leave or enter their country.
Right, that
Uh,
was why they weren't dying, because no one was coming in.
right. And but thank God we all made it through it, and we don't have to deal with that stuff anymore. I mean, looking forward, I did see recently that somebody in Oregon or Colorado was positively identified with the Black Plague, so that'll be interesting. Yeah.
Damn.
Which I'm pretty sure the Black Plague hasn't been seen in like over 60 years or something like that.
And by the way, I
But
want to say something so that your listeners don't think I'm some crazy liberal that is just on here talking about masks and stuff. I was raised by a Republican father and a Democrat mother, and I voted my entire life with my heart. I voted for some of the most famous Republicans in history and some of the most famous Democrats in history. I like science, and it's like that's where I am. I'm not a gang member. I don't have to go with the blue or the red. I'll vote for whoever's
Right.
best for my country and for me and my family. That's the truth. That is the truth. I grew up on a military base where everyone was whatever you were and no one cared how you voted. I don't know how things are now, but like me, man, I am all about whoever is going to help me and my family and our country. That's who gets my vote.
Right. And speaking of that, because somebody asked me recently, like, are you voting for Donald Trump? And I was like, my wife is an immigrant, black and Latin. If I vote for him, I'm gonna end up buried 6 feet under the ground.
Right.
Because
How about we can stop the conversation when they go if they say that I'd be like I'm not voting for a rapist and a felon. Period. I'm not going to vote for someone who tried to send people to the Capitol to stop democracy because they
right,
wanted to lie to the country and say that they won. That's an insurrection. That's an insurrection, man. Like you tried to take. What if they made it? What if they killed Nancy Pelosi and the vice president that day?
right. Or
Donald
if
Trump was president at the time. He didn't tell them to stop until 3.5 hours later, after
and a
three and a half
lot of
hours of them beating police officers.
yeah, and I mean I mean the amount of damage that they had caused throughout those 3.5 hours. I mean, he he could have easily stopped it way before that, and he didn't. And I mean, that's I mean that's why people have a big conspiracy about the whole shooting recently, because there was a lot of if, ands, or buts about like the whole situation of that going on. Because the, granted, being like saying that they nicked him just as like a stunt or whatever like that. I don't think that's necessarily what it was. I think it was more along the sense of they asked a few people to make some kind of like gesture or something in the crowd and stuff like that. And amongst these people was this kid, and he was like, "Well, wouldn't it be great if I just went up there and just took care of the problem?" And then also the spot where he did it, like according to like the stuff that I've been reading online, is that was according to research and through the CIA and Secret Service. That was the prime place. If there was ever going to be an assassination at that spot, that was the place to be. And so, if
Dude,
you
I
think
don't believe in
that's
most conspiracy theories, but if I had Getting High with Dante and debunking shit, I would probably be on the conspiracy side because there's too many weird unanswered questions. Like there's video of a guy aiming at him, ready to shoot him, and he does shoot the guy right afterwards, but he lets him take like 5 shots. Pop, 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 and then he shoots him.
and we've seen enough police body cam footage to know that a police usually shoots before they see something happen. And
And why was he allowed to be up there? Like there's new footage coming out where the police are told he's up there, and they go over there and you know what I mean? I don't know on this one, but if I were going to believe in any like conspiracy theory, it would be that there's something weird in that one. Because I also know that what's his name? The guy who shot Kennedy, Oswald, didn't do it.
yep,
You, know, you want to know who
right.
did? I can tell. I don't know all of their names, but one of them is Woody Harrelson's father. I'm not joking. Woody Harrelson's father, if you study the JFK assassination, there are 3 tramps that were up on the grassy knoll. Tramps in the old days were homeless people, right? There were 3 tramps that were walked off the grassy knoll right afterwards, walked out with a police officer. The police officer is unrecognizable to the police force. They have these photos of him and no one knows who he is. And the 3 people walking off, I think it's the one in the middle, is Woody Harrelson's father, who is a well known assassin who died in jail for assassinating federal judges.
So when you say Woody Harrelson, you're talking about like the actor Woody Harrelson,
The
like his
actor
spot.
Woody Harrelson's father died in
Wow.
jail for assassinating federal judges. Look all this up. But he's also one of the 3 tramps that was walked off of the grassy knoll immediately after. Look up the 3 tramps at the grassy knoll, and you'll see a fake cop walking them off. And one of them, if you look it up, I forget his name, William Harrison or something like that. It's Woody Harrelson's father. Um, so the guy who wrote the book that JFK was written about recognized me in Dealey Plaza one day. I was
Okay.
in I was in Dallas doing shows, and he goes, "Oh my God, you're Dante from Last Comic Standing." And he goes, I wrote this one book. And I was like, dude, I have your book. And so he took me on a tour of everywhere. And he goes, look, go up into where they say he shot them. I bought the thing where you can go up into the bookstore. It's a museum now. And there's no way that Oswald could have shot anyone from that angle. It's the wrong angle. Like there's a tree there. There's no way. But everyone goes, yes, there were shots coming from the grassy knoll. No one ever investigated who was on the grassy knoll. And yet we do know that there were 3 homeless people that don't even look homeless being walked off. And one of them turned out to be an assassin that died in jail after assassin. Are you looking this up, who his father was?
Yep. So I got the picture here. So this is the picture you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the one. That's not even a real cop. And the 3 people behind him, one of those guys, I can't see the picture, unfortunately. But if you look up Woody Harrelson's father, the assassin, you'll find other pictures of him and follow the news. But it's like, come on, man. Like, that's who did it. These guys were paid assassins. I don't know who did it. I can't tell you, like, who paid them. But it's not like those 3 got together and said, hey, we're 3 separate assassins. Let's go kill the president of the United States. Someone had to do it. It was, at the
Also,
time they were saying it was either CIA or it was this or it was Johnson or it was the Cubans. I don't know who did it. I just know who pulled the triggers.
the fact that the front man that's walking here is looking down.
Yeah,
That's
and also
very
look at
peculiar.
the president was just shot. Are any of them in handcuffs? Those cops aren't even looking like they're like watching them that hard.
Yeah, that is very weird. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. But yeah, that's insane. And if I had to guess based off of the way that they look, I'd have to say the tallest guy is probably Willie Harrison's father. But that's insane. The fact that his father was one of those guys, and
You should
the
pull
fact
up
that he was an assassin.
search Woody Harrelson's father assassin and then see what comes up. And remind me his name. It's going to drive me a little crazy.
Charles Void Harrelson. So
Excellent.
born in 1938 and died 2007, was an American contract killer, organized crime figure who was convicted of assassinating federal judge John H. Wood Jr., the first federal judge to be assassinated in the 20th century. Charles Harrelson was the father of actors Brett and Woody Harrelson.
Told you.
Wow,
Crazy.
that is insane. And that's one thing I've always wondered about contract killers and assassins and all this stuff is like, how the hell do you get into that? Like, I can't even imagine
Most
the talk
likely
or
they worked for the mob or someone like that, and then when the CIA or whoever arrested them, the FBI said, what if we put you on our payroll? Or some other organization goes, well, this guy, he's assassinated a few people for the mob. Why don't you hire him? And that's how you become a contract killer, I think.
I think. Speaking of killers, I also saw something
Killed
on.
someone.
Yes, can you
Yes,
speak a little bit about that?
sure. You know why? Because it's not going to make anyone cringe.
Okay.
It was an accident, and it was my own mother that I murdered. Um, so what
Okay.
happened was, and it's an okay story. I know everyone's like, there's no story that you can tell that's okay to murder your mother. Just listen. So
Okay.
my mother, and once I say this, you're gonna relax. Your butthole will loosen up a little. My
Okay.
mother was dying of cancer, and my father calls me. He's in Apple Valley with her, and he goes, "Your mother went into her cancer coma today. She's probably going to die within the next couple hours. You probably are not going to make it in time." So I jumped in my car with my wife, and we drove to Apple Valley as quickly as I could. And I said, "Is she here?" And he goes, "Yes, she's still alive." And so I ran to her bedside, and my dad goes, "I'll give you guys some time alone." And I knelt at her side, and I held her hand, and I told her everything I wanted to, and I could hear her go, breathing. And then all of a sudden it went, and nothing, right? And I went, "Well, I love you, Mom." And I kissed her and stuff. And I was kneeling at her bedside. When I stood up, all of a sudden I heard her oxygen tank. Apparently I was on the plastic tube that
Oh, that's
held her oxygen. My knees were on it as I was kneeling, and I heard it go psst, like, oh my God, like I just strangled my mom
Oh,
by kneeling down on her tube. And so for months, I didn't tell my family that I had murdered my mom. And then eventually I said to my wife and daughter, I want to confess something to you because it's been bothering me. And they both started laughing and goes, oh my God, your mom would think that's the funniest thing that you took her out about an hour before she should have gone. Your mom is probably telling that story in heaven right now to everyone she knows, going, oh, listen to my asshole son comes at my bedside and he starts telling me how much he loves me and strangles me to death. So
and
that's
I
how it
mean,
went down.
it wasn't like she was healthy or anything like that.
She
I mean,
would
she
have
was
not
in.
recovered ever. She
Yeah.
literally had maybe an hour left in her, maybe an hour.
So calm down, you woke people. All right,
Right,
calm
and I've
down out there.
also saved a million lives. I have, like, I know how to do the Heimlich. I've saved people from choking to death before, where they were literally blue. I saved a baby on the news a couple years ago. It made it to the news. Some guy was in the park and his daughter was choking, and I applied all these things that I knew. But what I ended up doing was I drove them as
Wow.
fast as I could through LA traffic. It was like a movie. I was going in and out of traffic, and I saw a cop, and I just pulled up in front of his car, and that's what made it to the news. Is the dude had a body cam on. I bring this girl to him. He held her upside down and knocked whatever it was out of her, and she ended up living. But um, so I feel like
Wow.
me killing my mom, I've got a lot of good karma too from saving. Like I saved a dude on TV one time from jumping off of a roof, and I don't know.
I mean, well, saving an infant from choking is just incredible because that's one of my biggest fears being a father is choking and stuff like that because I know you can't one you have to use depending on the age you have to use two fingers, three fingers, whatever it might be, fist, whatever, and then you can't put as much pressure and stuff like that.
And
It's
you
just it's
have to
a
hold them upside down. And the guy didn't speak English. Like I think he was actually like he and his wife, I think, were babysitting a. They were Latin, and the kid was blonde and white. Like I think they were babysitting, and it's like, so I'm freaking out in my like I was driving by the park in my car, and everyone was swerving around this man who's holding like a blue baby, and it was insane. I got to tell you, man. After I dropped her off with the cop, I didn't. I had to get out of traffic. I was blocking everyone. And so
right.
I flipped my car around, and my wife was getting her hair done, and she's like calling and texting, I'm done. Come get me. Where are you? And when I pulled up, I was shaking. And then she goes, what happened? And literally, I was scream crying for a good 5 minutes. I couldn't speak because I thought the girl died. I didn't watch him save her life until my wife turned on the news that night and went, babe, I didn't wake you up to tell you, but the baby lived. But before that, I was like, oh my God, I thought a baby died in our car. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean I and
But
that
yeah, man, it was crazy. Cops would pull up next to my car and be like, hey, and they hated me at the time because I was filming them do bad shit. And they knew me by name. They'd pull up and go, Dante, good job saving that baby, man.
and I mean well, one after knowing that the kid's okay, I mean the amount, the surge of adrenaline probably shooting through you was probably incredible. Because I mean, it wasn't as significant as helping a choking baby, but I want to say like 7 or 8 years ago when I was still living with my parents back at home. It was just me and my mom home. It was early in the morning. It was like 8, 7 o'clock or something like that. And like I was still in my bed sleeping. All of a sudden, I felt the house just shake, like something I've never felt before. And I was like, "What the hell just happened?" And so like I got out of my room, and then I went down the stairs, and I look out the window, and there's a car underneath our house. And I was like, "What?" And I screamed at my mom and go, Mom, there's a car under our house. And she's like, what? And I go, there is a fucking car under our house. And so I quickly, because I was still in my boxers, so I quickly put on some pants, and I go out there, and it's these two old ladies in the car, and they can't get out. And there's like smoke filling on the inside or whatever. So I go around the side and I pry the door open, and I get her out and stuff like that. During that, I had inhaled all that toxic fumes, and I almost puked myself. I had to get some oxygen afterwards. But they well one when I first opened the door, they seemed completely out of it, like they didn't even know what the hell just happened. And so when we first got them out, they were a little delirious and stuff like that. But then after they got a little oxygen, they explained what happened, and apparently the lady went to hit the brake, but just hit the gas instead and just floored it through the stops because we're at a four-way stop, and she just stopped right through it and just went straight into the corner into her house. And luckily, she didn't hit any viable parts to like the structure, so then there was no, possible collapse or anything like that happening, which was fortunate. But
You're a hero, though, man. You reacted. See, most people don't react. That's the
yeah,
key. React.
yeah, that was just a crazy moment. I
But
couldn't.
imagine if you didn't go out and you just called the police and waited in your house like most people would do. The ladies may have died from inhaling the smoke, even if there's no fire. Just the toxins could have knocked them out, and it'd be like when you kill yourself in a garage with the smoking.
Right.
So you
And
reacted and you saved them. So good for you.
and spe- uh just because we're gonna have to start closing this out, I'll tell you
Yeah,
one
we got to
last.
wrap up. I have to pee and make my dinner and walk dogs.
Okay, all right. So, well, one last thing I want to say is thank you, Dante, for taking the time
Thank
because I
you.
know you're a busy man and everything, and my listeners are definitely going to appreciate it because I let everybody know that you were going to be on for the next episode, so they're all looking forward to this and definitely looking forward to the tips and everything that you gave us.
And by
Did
the
you have?
way, you are the most brave interviewer. You're the
Well, so that's funny you say that. So I was speaking with a person that I'm most likely going to be having as my new co-host because my original co-host dropped out because I actually don't know. His Facebook got deleted, his phone is turned off, and I don't really know. So this other guy was asking, or was I was talking to him about like the interview process, and I was like, it's like, yeah, my first interview, I was like, I realized there were so many things that I wanted to ask him and stuff like that, and I didn't write it down, and then I figured out afterwards, and then I wrote down stuff today, but then I threw it out. So I had to remember off the dome, but luckily I was able to remember a lot of the stuff, and because I did do a lot of research on you prior to this interview because I
cool.
wanted to get my facts straight on everything, and um, it means the world to me that you were able to do this, and I don't know how you are about like promoting or anything like that with the show or anything like that. If you're willing to do that, if
Sure.
I tag you in it or anything like
Please
that.
do.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. But is there any dates coming up for you coming up that you
Sure.
want to
So
announce?
I'm going to be at, I think it's called JP's Comedy Club in Gilbert, Arizona next weekend. Um, After that, there's a million things on my website. Just go to comicdante.com, and my entire calendar is on there. And then if you want to follow me on social media, I am Dante the Comic on all social media. The only one that's Dante the Comic 2, I think, is TikTok because China, when I hit like a million followers, they were about to pay me, and then they were like, "Ah, we don't want to pay you." So I got deleted, and I had to start over. So now I've only got like I don't know 60,000. I don't know how many people I have on there. It's not a million. I can tell you that. Oh well.
And I'll make sure to put all of his socials and all of this information in the bio and description for this episode, so then all of the viewers can make sure to click on that and view your upcoming tour dates
I
and
wish
everything
you the
like that.
best in comedy and on podcasting, man. Congratulations, and also finding a new place to live.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And Rawheads, let's just give it up one more time for Dante, the comedian of 37 years. Let's play this out. All right. And I will be having this episode premiere the following day at noon, so be looking out for that. And or well, it'll be out by the time you guys hear this. Being stupid, but have a good night, Rawheads, and keep safe.
Take care, buddy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again.